More than 20,000 Dutch people helped to hide Jews and others in need of hiding during those years. I willingly did what I could to help. My husband did as well. It was not enough.
Yeah.
Powerful words, right?
Definitely.
They're from Miep Gies, the woman who risked her life to hide the Frank family during World War II.
Oh, wow.
And today we're diving deep into her memoir, Anne Frank Remembered.
Okay.
Now, you might think you know this story, but Miep's book, it offers a whole new perspective. It's not just about Anne.
Right.
It's about Miep's own incredible journey and the lengths she went to in helping the Franks and others during, well, one of history's darkest chapters.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you love stories of courage and resilience, be sure to subscribe to our bookshelf channel for more deep dives like this. But let's get back to Miep. What's so striking about her story is how her own experiences as a child shaped her deep sense of empathy. Because she wasn't born in Amsterdam.
Oh, really?
She was a refugee herself.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Imagine being 11 years old, arriving in a new country with just a tag around your neck, frail and hungry.
Oh, my gosh.
That was Miep's reality when she arrived in Leiden, Holland from Vienna.
I mean, it's hard to even imagine being uprooted from everything you know and thrust into a totally new world.
Yeah. And yet Miep, she was met with incredible kindness by her adopted family, the Nieuwenhusses.
It sounds like that kindness really had a lasting impact on her.
It really did. They instilled in her a strong sense of social responsibility, like a belief that helping those in need was just the right thing to do, no matter what.
It's almost as if those early experiences prepared her for the incredibly difficult choices she'd have to make later in life.
Right. It's fascinating how life can sometimes do that. Prepare us for the unthinkable.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just surviving, She was thriving. She learned Dutch quickly, embraced Dutch culture.
I love that.
Even tried to master skating on those frozen canals, although she does admit, with a touch of humor, that she was terrible at it.
That's a great detail.
Yeah.
It makes her so relatable, right? Here she is trying to fit in, be a part of this new world, finding joy in simple things, despite the hardships she faced.
I agree. It speaks to her resilience, her determination to fully embrace this new life, and shows that even amidst adversity, there's room for humor, lightheartedness.
It's a good reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit finds ways to shine through. But then in 1933, Miep's life took another turn. She started working at a company called Travis & Company. That's where she met Otto Frank.
This is where things start to get really interesting. Picture a small office kitchen, Miep's perfecting her jam-making skills.
Oh, I love that.
Alongside this quiet, cultured man, Otto Frank.
Yeah.
And he was clearly missing his family, who, at that time, were still in Germany.
And as they made jam together, they talk about their lives, their hopes, anxieties, about Hitler's rise to power.
Right.
Shared a passion for politics, a deep concern for the future.
It's just amazing to think about these seemingly ordinary moments. Making jam, discussing politics, all against this backdrop of such extraordinary circumstances.
Absolutely.
And soon the rest of the Frank family, Edith, Margot, and of course young Anne, arrived in Amsterdam, seeking refuge from Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Miep describes Anne as this curious, inquisitive child full of life and energy.
Hard to fathom that just a few years later, their lives would be completely turned upside down. But before the war, life in Amsterdam, it was different. Miep was building a life with her husband Hank, enjoying those simple pleasures, bike rides, movie dates.
Yeah, but the looming threat of war, it cast this long shadow over everything. They, like so many others, were trying to just find a sense of normalcy amidst these growing concerns about Hitler's aggression and the increasing restrictions on Jewish refugees in Amsterdam.
And then when the Nazis occupied Holland in 1940, life as they knew it changed irrevocably. Miep describes the fear and uncertainty that gripped the Jewish community as anti-Jewish measures were put into place one after another.
It's a chilling reminder of how quickly things can change. The yellow stars, curfews, constant threat of raids. Miep paints such a vivid picture of the oppressive atmosphere that descended upon Amsterdam.
Yeah. And even though she considered herself Dutch, Miep, she had to confront the reality of her Austrian passport. She even had this run-in with a Nazi official who tried to recruit her for their cause.
And I love how she describes presenting her contemptuous face to him.
Yeah.
It was a small act of defiance, but it speaks volumes about her character.
It really does. She was not one to stand by passively in the face of injustice.
No.
And then, the moment that changed everything, Otto confided in Miep about his plan to go into hiding. And without hesitation, she agreed to help.
Wow. That was an incredibly courageous decision, a decision that put her own life in danger. But for Miep, it seemed like there was no other choice.
She saw her friends, her neighbors, facing unimaginable persecution. She just couldn't stand by and do nothing.
What's remarkable is that throughout the book, Miep, she never portrays herself as a hero. She repeatedly states that she simply did what was asked of her, what she felt was right.
Her humility is striking. But her actions, they speak louder than words. She risked everything to help the Franks and others, and in doing so, I think she demonstrated the true meaning of courage and compassion.
Absolutely.
And so began this harrowing experience of hiding the Frank family and 4 others in that secret annex behind the office at Prinsengracht 263.
I mean, Miep's book gives us this glimpse into this hidden world.
Yeah.
She describes the cramped quarters, the need for absolute silence during the day, that constant fear of discovery, the dwindling resources.
It's hard to imagine the emotional toll that must have taken on everyone, both those in hiding and those helping them.
Miep, she became their lifeline to the outside world, bringing them food, news, books for Anne, even little comforts to keep their spirits up.
I can only imagine the weight of that responsibility. Like going about your day knowing that the slightest misstep could have these devastating consequences for the people you're trying to protect.
Right. It really shows her strength, her commitment to their well-being. And all while she's navigating her own challenges, trying to become a Dutch citizen, dealing with food rationing, even harboring another young man, Karel. He was evading forced labor.
So her life was just this constant balancing act.
Absolutely.
Trying to keep things normal on the surface while living with this extraordinary secret.
Exactly. And then, August 1944, that devastating day arrived when the Frank family and the others in hiding, they were arrested. Miep describes the shock, the fear, this feeling of just utter helplessness as the Nazi security forces stormed into the office.
It's one of those moments that just sends chills down your spine, just thinking about the terror they must have felt. Hopes and dreams shattered in an instant.
It's so sad. And Miep's courage in that moment, it's remarkable. She confronted the arresting officer, trying to bribe him, reason with him, anything to save her friends.
It was all in vain, though. And in the aftermath of the arrest, Miep was left with this crushing weight of guilt and grief.
She describes it as a nightmare come true. The annex, once so full of life, it was now empty and silent, just a haunting reminder of those she had lost.
And yet, amidst that despair, she clung to this glimmer of hope, desperately looking for any news about the fate of those who'd been taken.
It's during this time that Miep's commitment to preserving Anne's diary becomes even more poignant. She carefully gathered all those scattered pages after the arrest, refusing to let them fall into the wrong hands.
It was a promise, wasn't it? To herself, to Anne, to history. Even in the midst of her own grief, she understood how powerful those words were, the story they held.
Imagine her holding those fragile pages, knowing they contained the hopes, dreams, fears of a young girl whose life had been so tragically cut short.
As the war dragged on, Miep continued to face those hardships of life in occupied Amsterdam. The hunger, the cold, the constant fear of raids. Yet she never lost sight of her humanity.
Right. We learned about her decision to care for this cat, Barry. He'd been left behind by a Jewish neighbor who was taken away. It's a small act of kindness. But it really shows her compassion, her empathy for everyone who was suffering.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even in those times, those dark times, there's still room for love, for compassion. And finally, May 1945, liberation came. Miep describes this wave of joy relief that just washed over Amsterdam as the city was freed from Nazi occupation.
It was a moment of collective catharsis, a time to grieve for those who were lost, and to start that long process of healing, rebuilding.
But for Miep, the journey wasn't over. She had Anne's diary. This testament to the young girl's spirit, her hopes, her dreams.
Initially, she was hesitant to share it. She wanted to honor Anne's privacy, to protect her memory.
It's understandable, I think, to wrestle with those ethical implications of publishing such a personal account.
Absolutely. But eventually she realized the significance of Anne's words, their power to connect with people on a human level.
So after Otto Frank returned from Auschwitz, the sole survivor of those who had gone into hiding, Miep gave him the diary.
And it was Otto who made the difficult decision to have it published.
He recognized that Anne's story needed to be told, that her voice had the power to reach beyond the annex and touch the hearts of people around the world.
And he was right. Anne's diary, it became a global phenomenon, translated into so many languages. Adapted for stage and screen, it became the symbol of hope, Resilience, the indomitable human spirit.
And Miep, she found herself thrust into the spotlight,
Right.
becoming this caretaker of Anne's legacy, sharing her memories and insights with the world.
It's a role she never sought out, but one that she embraced with grace and humility.
She traveled the world, spoke to countless audiences, emphasized the importance of tolerance, understanding, the dangers of discrimination.
Yeah, her message, it resonated so deeply, reminding people about the human cost of war and the power of our actions to make a difference.
But even amidst this global recognition of Anne Frank's story, Miep never forgot that Anne was just one of millions who suffered during the Holocaust.
Absolutely. She constantly emphasized the importance of remembering all the victims, not just the famous ones. And she challenged everyone to learn from the past, to fight injustice, to strive for a more just and compassionate world.
And one of the most intriguing aspects of Miep's memoir is her reflection on the mystery of the Frank family's betrayal. The identity of the informant, it's still unknown. A question that's haunted historians and readers of Anne's diary for decades.
Yeah, it's a haunting thought to know that someone betrayed their trust, leading to such unimaginable tragedy.
And Miep grapples with this question throughout the book. She shares her suspicions, her theories, but ultimately that answer remains elusive.
Right.
And in one really compelling passage, she talks about this encounter with a Dutch policeman who was investigating the betrayal years after the war.
Wow.
He questioned her about this man, Frits van Matto, who worked at the warehouse and was suspected of being the informant. But Miep, she was adamant that van Matto wasn't the betrayer. And she reveals a secret that she had kept for years, that van Matto actually had a son in hiding during the war.
Really?
She and Hank had concluded that someone who risked their own child's life wouldn't betray others seeking safety.
That's a fascinating twist. It really underscores how complex the situation was. You know, it makes you think about the motivations of people caught in impossible circumstances, the moral dilemmas they faced.
And it's this unresolved puzzle that Miep leaves us to think about. A reminder that history isn't always neat and tidy, that some questions may never be answered, and that the past continues to affect the present.
Right. It's a reminder that there are limits to what we can know. Some secrets may just stay buried by time, but maybe that's part of what makes Anne Frank Remembered so compelling to read.
I think so. It doesn't give you easy answers or try to oversimplify things. Instead, it invites us to think about the complexities of history, the power of individual stories.
Exactly. It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading. It makes you reflect and consider the choices you would make in those unimaginable circumstances.
It does. And you realize that history isn't just about dates and events. It's about people, real people, who lived and loved and faced these unbelievable challenges. And it's through their stories that we can really understand the impact of those events, the human cost of hatred and intolerance.
And Anne Frank Remembered is a story that we need to keep telling, for generations to come. It reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's light, there's hope, and there are ordinary people who do extraordinary things.
So to wrap things up, if you're looking for a deeper understanding of the human side of history, a glimpse into the lives behind this iconic story of Anne Frank, and a reminder of the power of individual courage, you should check out Anne Frank Remembered.
It's a powerful, moving testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of one woman's unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive into Anne Frank Remembered. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going. It's incredible to think about the impact this one book has had on the world.
It really is. It's a testament to the power of storytelling, don't you think? Anne Frank's diary, it gave a voice to the millions who suffered during the Holocaust. And Miep's memoir, it adds this whole other layer to that story, this really personal perspective on the human cost of war and the resilience of the human spirit.
And what I thought was so insightful was Miep's reflection on her own role in all this. She always downplayed her actions, insisting she just did what anyone would have done.
Yeah. Her humility is remarkable, but her actions, they really speak for themselves. She risked her life, her freedom, everything to help those in need, and she didn't expect anything in return.
It's a good reminder that heroism isn't always these huge gestures, Sometimes it's the small acts of courage, the everyday choices to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
And Miep's story really makes you think about the choices we would make in those same situations. Would we have the same courage? The same compassion? That's the kind of question that sticks with you long after you finish the book.
It really does. And it makes you realize that history isn't just dates and events. It's people, Real people who lived and loved and faced unimaginable challenges. And it's through their stories that we can really understand the impact of those events, the human cost of hatred and intolerance.
Anne Frank remembered. It's a story that needs to be told and retold, for generations to come. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's light, there's hope, and there are those everyday people who end up doing extraordinary things.
So if you were looking for a book that will challenge you, inspire you, and stay with you long after you've finished it, I highly recommend Anne Frank Remembered. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit and a call to action for all of us to work towards a more just, compassionate world.
It's a book that will really open your eyes, it will touch your heart, and I think it leaves you with this renewed sense of hope for humanity.
And that's it for our deep dive into Anne Frank Remembered. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.